Good morning and welcome to the May 16th, 2019 Downtown Design Review Committee meeting. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Anthony Blatt.
Present.
Corey Bates.
Present.
Gary Jones. Julie Kriegel.
Present.
Deborah Richards.
Present.
Mariana Sador.
Present.
And Rosie Trujillo.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. The minutes are in your packet.
Go ahead, Corey.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
That's a Bates Kriegel motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is cases withdrawn, and there are none. Item 4 is continuance requests, and there are no items. Item 5 is the consent docket, and there are 2 items. Where are you going to recuse yourself? Thank you. Do we need to have any, do you want to speak to the continuance, to the consent docket?
I'll do it. The 2 items on the consent docket are items that were heard by the committee last month under cases for individual consideration. The applicant did a great job of working with staff to find a solution that provided attached signs instead of freestanding signs, and that's why we have put it on the consent docket, because there's no issues about signs located in the right-of-way, and we believe they addressed everything the committee asked them to address last time.
Do we have any questions for staff? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent docket.
Second.
It's Bates Kriegel motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6 is cases for individual consideration. And 6A is Fdtca 19-00024 at 516 Northwest 8th Street. Is the applicant present?
No.
Okay.
I got a phone call today from the architect who advised me that the owner, no one was going to be present for this item. At the last meeting, you had requested, and there were a couple of suggestions for the applicant to revise their plan to cover the screen wall, and no additional information was provided. So staff recommends, absent any additional information, since staff doesn't support this, we request that this item of the whole project, the rest of the project was approved, but that this item be denied.
Is there any questions for staff?
Would this be something we would vote on without the applicant present?
Well, that's really the only way you're going to have to vote on it, because they're not going to, they advised me they were not coming to the meeting.
And they did not ask for a continuance?
No.
Or?
No, they basically said to me that they were going to appeal the decision.
Does anybody in the audience wish to speak to this? If there's no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to, excuse me, I'll move to deny item 2B, main building clad existing block on north facade with EIFS on both sides, on the basis that it does not comply with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section D of the staff report.
I'll second.
It's a Bates Richards motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item B is Fdtca 19-00044 at 1 Myriad Gardens. Is the applicant present? Thank you. Do you want to tee this one up?
Yeah, this is an item that was on your April agenda, along with the two other items that were on the consent docket. The reason this is not on the consent docket with the other two is that there's still variance requests involved with the proposed application, even though the applicant's revised his submittal to address some of the concerns that the committee raised last month. The biggest change, why is it not? Okay. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay. All right. So the change that they've made on both the east and the west sign is they've gone from the 39-foot tall freestanding sign to a 6-foot tall monument sign at both locations. This is the west location you see here. You may recall that at the meeting last month, the 39-foot tall sign was on this side of the entry due to visibility concerns with respect to parked vehicles and the street trees along the east side of Ron Norick Boulevard. They've chosen to move the sign to this location, just to the north of the driveway. And this is what it looks like on the ground. It's pretty much going to go right in that location where that yellow box has been placed in the slide. And then this is kind of what it looks like from a little further south on Ron Norick Boulevard. On the west side, the east side, on E.K. Gaylord entry, this is the location is essentially the same as it was before with the 39-foot tall freestanding sign, but again, they've changed it to this new design with a 6-foot tall monument sign, and this is kind of the location that you're going to see from the ground. This is kind of where it would be in the long view shots looking south along the east side of E.K. Gaylord Boulevard. These are some of the surrounding uses that you have there. And then this is what the sign looks like. As you can see, it's about 6 foot tall. So they've cleared the locations they've proposed through Traffic Commission, Traffic Department in terms of the site distance triangle and so on and so forth. And because of that, we are recommending approval of the project and recommending that the committee provide the Board of Adjustment with a recommendation of approval for locating the signs in the public right-of-way. They did go back on the west location and decide to provide some landscaping, the required amount of landscaping on the west elevation, so both of the signs, east and west, will have the required landscaping, so no variances are required for that as they were when you saw it last month.
Do we have any questions for staff? Does the applicant want to say anything?
Good morning. Thank you. Corey Hubert, COPPA 431 West Main. We heard all of your comments last month, appreciated all of your comments last month, and came back to the table seeking your permission on this. Appreciate your comments about the need for branding and to communicate to the public where there's parking, because even this week I've heard, I didn't know I could park there, referring to this exact property. And that comes from other users of our products, the streetcar and whatnot. So really hoping that you guys will authorize this.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
No questions, just a comment that really appreciate the effort since last meeting. And I think at all three properties where you guys ended up is a much better place than before.
Corey, I'd further add to that statement that it's with your input that provided a better product in our minds too. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that A, the applicant shall obtain variances from the Board of Adjustment for the prohibition against signs in the street right-of-way for both sign locations.
Second.
the Bates-Kriegel motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll also move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the prohibition against signs in the street right-of-way for both sign locations.
Second.
The Bates-Kriegel motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item C, which is DTCA 19-00052 at 1 North Broadway. Is the applicant present?
Yes, they are here. Yes, I'm sorry, the owner is here and the architect is here. This is a request for, on the Classen Inn Motel that has been getting a lot of press. It's only for the two pieces of it that need variances. Staff previously, about a few weeks ago, administratively approved the revisions to the building. Sorry.
But you're on the Sheridan is up next.
Oh, I am so
Item C.
sorry. I apologize, folks. That was just a preview. Okay, here we go. So this is a request to paint the building. And I didn't realize there was actually unpainted brick on the building until I started looking on Google Earth. And then when I went out there, I went, whoa, there is unpainted brick on the first floor. And there is a policy about not painting unpainted brick. It's easier to understand that when we had a case recently on Automobile Alley, which is in a historic district. This is not in a historic district. However, as I referenced in the staff report, this actual structure has a historic significance, and it's not old enough yet. It's historically significant because of when it was built. It was the first hotel built in a really long time in downtown. It's quite possible at some point if somebody wanted to go forward and see if that it could actually be put on the National Register for that historic significance to the downtown development of Oklahoma City. So I went out and took pictures of, here's the brick, and I know that the applicants have some really good renderings, really good pictures to also show you. There are basically storefront areas on both sides of the main entrance that are, as it appears right here. There's also a brick knee wall that is to the south of the main entrance that runs all along this area. And then as it turns the corner, and I apologize, so dark, both of these are also brick, and then there's a brick column. So this is on the south facade. So I tried to point out where all the unpainted brick is. When you look at that building, that you don't really come away with, oh, it's got unpainted brick. You come away with its concrete and stucco that has been painted, and they're wanting to change the color, and I provided that information in there. What's interesting about this block is it's all one big, huge building, including a parking structure that you just approved new signage for. There's several different owners to different pieces of this, but it's all connected. And that is what you're seeing in the lower right corner is where one of those signs is going that you just approved, because that's the entrance to the parking structure. The proposed color right now, it's 3 colors, and they're going to 2 colors. And two-dimensional, it doesn't read very well because things kind of blend in. I think you might get a difference because of depth. You'll get more depth, I think, when in practice. But unpainted brick down here in this area, as well as around the corner. There were several different colors. There's 2 that they've got, and they're basically really similar. This one here that's coming out as wide is just kind of a little lighter than this one. But based on the policy that is included in the downtown handout, staff is recommending approval of painting everything that's already been painted. We broke it out, concrete and stucco areas and some metal components. But we're recommending that item 1B, which is painting the unpainted brick, be denied because we don't feel that it does comply with the guidelines and regulations of downtown design district.
Do we have any questions for staff? Would the applicant like to make a couple of
Yes.
points?
Thank you. Good morning. I have a couple of better, larger pictures that might help visualize
Could you
some
go
of
ahead
these
and
pictures. I'm
give
sorry.
us your name and your address?
Keith Johnson. I'm sorry, Keith Johnson. I'm the general manager of the Sheraton downtown. I've been there for about 3.5 years. If we go to, let's go to one of these pictures first, just real quickly. This picture right here, just to give you some background of why we want to change the color. Downtown is growing. It is modernizing a little bit. We want to stay contemporary. As the biggest hotel in Oklahoma City, this building has really not changed since the 70s in terms of color. And with our neighbors all getting contemporary and with the growth of downtown, we feel that a change to a more contemporary, modern look would enhance the downtown area. We have asked our clients when they come for site visits if our hotel has an effect, color of our hotel has an effect on their decisions, and believe it or not, it does. They say it does feel a little bit dated. This color right here, the peach color, is very 80-ish, late 70s. So that's why, that was our philosophy and our mentality behind of wanting to change the color of the hotel. As for the bricks, a little bit better close-up picture of the bricks. I totally appreciate and can understand the downtown and the historic history being relatively new to Oklahoma City. I can appreciate the brick issue, and I'm willing to be very flexible. The pictures that are presented that wanted to be painted, obviously they're not the traditional historic bricks that you might see in downtown, Bricktown area. Does that really matter? Probably not. But you can sort of see that it's a very 70-ish kind of mortar brick. And one contractor even mentioned to me, that's not even real brick, even though it is, but it's not the traditional brick. And it is very easy to be painted over. So it's not like the bricks that are, you can see it's all very smooth. It's not the bricks that you would see downtown where there might be a little uneven. There is brick that was mentioned that's all around the hotel. We do not want to paint the brick that's in front of the hotel. The only brick that we are considering would be the brick that would be right here, right next to the loading dock. It's hidden. You can only see it from the Sheraton area. All the other brick around the hotel would not be touched, especially in front of the hotel, because we do feel that that does add on, since we're only 1.5 blocks, 2 blocks from Bricktown, to keep that tradition. And we're all in favor of that. But this area right here would be the only area that we would request to paint the brick.
Let me clarify with, so there's a brick column on the south.
Yes.
And there is brick in here.
Yes.
But you're saying that the brick on the east facade, which
Yes.
includes the knee wall, so you're saying paint this
Just-
brick,
just
and that
yeah,
column?
just
Okay.
that area which
But
is
you're saying leave
nothing there.
Leave the knee wall alone and leave the brick on both the north and south side of the main entrance alone?
Absolutely, that is correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, I did not
No.
realize that, or I would have pointed that one out.
And we took that into account, and when we reassessed that, once again, we are very understanding and appreciate, that concern.
Okay.
We did not realize it was a good concern until it was brought to our
Okay.
attention, and we said, you know what, that's a good point.
So you're
Let's be
requesting-
flexible on that.
To only paint the brick on the south facade?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Laura, could you clarify that again? Show us the picture. I want to make sure I understand what.
Sure.
Are we talking about the recessed area or
So
not?
he's saying they're going to leave alone the brick on the east facade, which is the brick on both sides, both the north and south side of the main entrance. There's also a brick knee wall on that east facade. They're going to leave that alone. But on the south facade, which is what this is, there's area brick here and here, and there's a brick column that you can see that goes up to here, and those are the areas that they want to paint. So,
And
and then
once
here's a further away, so it's just the brick area here, here, and the column, but nothing around on the east facade at all.
And once again, that is our employee entrance area. That's where our dumpster is. That's where our back dock is. It's not that visible, but once again, that, we wouldn't be touching anything else.
So why paint it? So I guess where my perspective is, I think painting the entire building, the tower and even the podium, you're getting the impact that you're looking for as far as a contemporary expression. And then on top of that, the brick on the east at the entry is staying. I guess I'm not sure why paint this brick. It'll become more of a maintenance issue. And
great question. This is Terry, our architect. He and I have debated this. If we were prepared for that question, and I'll let Terry address it too. If I leave something out, it was simply. This would be before, and this would be. It was just from a look standpoint. It's from a hotelier standpoint. It was just from our perspective that it just. And to your point, well, Keith, you're contradicting yourself. It doesn't blend because of the way that brick comes down off the wall compared to the other areas and how it was hidden, not hidden, but it's a look standpoint.
Yes, definitely. It's an aesthetic. It's the other buildings next to it are similar color.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Terry Madem, GH2 Architects, 704 West Sheridan. It's really just updating that aesthetic to match the other buildings that are right adjacent to it along Sheridan there, so it's consistent. It has a little bit more pop. Yes, it's the back of house entries, but it does start to unify that facade a bit better. Does it have to be? In our opinions, no, but it's the desire of the client to really help tie everything along that block together. And then as you go up towards the north and the east facade, we keep that brick character there. That's where everybody is walking around and they get that warm feel of here's the brick, and keep that character there.
And the one thing, I'm sorry, I failed, there is a screen wall, that a stucco screen wall that would be painted as part of this, I'm assuming, that is on Sheridan that actually reads as part of the building as you're driving down the road, that kind of screens the building, so I didn't want to leave that out.
In this picture at all.
And that goes all the way to the parking garage
That
entrance.
one's a little bit better up on the screen right
Yeah, and it's a very tall screen wall, as you can see, so it's actually as tall, if not taller, than the unpainted brick, but it doesn't go all the way to the corner. You can see it stops right here, which is even about with that piece.
I tend to agree with Corey's comments, and specifically with respect to the southeast corner of the building, you have a current brick surface, a column that separates it that you're going to accent in black, and then you turn the corner, and now you're proposing to introduce a third element where it could be unified around that corner, and you could have some consistency in what's happening. It's still down at the pedestrian level, and even though those trees are there, they're eventually going to grow. They're going to get limbed up a little bit. I I really appreciate and like the idea of keeping the brick on the east side in the pedestrian zone. I think it's reinforced turning the corner. That's myself. I like that. So are there any other comments with respect to the brick or any other comments from the applicant?
I just want to say that I appreciate that we looked at this, and I'm okay with painting the south facade. That's the one that you're proposing to paint, right?
Yes.
To give yourselves a little bit more visibility or to update the look. So I think this is a little bit different than what was just said before, but I would be willing to approve painting the south facade.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I'm just going to say I like the way you're updating it. But I have this issue about setting precedents and being careful that we don't set a precedent and then everybody's going to come back and ask for the same thing. So I'm going to make a motion. Let me find my motion here.
Okay, let me ask a quick question of legal about the best, based on your comment that you like how they updated it. If we were to change the, we now have deny 1B. Well, they're modifying 1B so that it is only painting the south facade. So if the motion were to include, if she read 1, which is approve 1A, which we agreed with, but then I guess modify 2 so that it would read approve painting the brick on the south facade. Oh, I'm so sorry. I leaped in there. Never mind.
Yeah, but
Okay.
could you still phrase it, like when you read it, phrase it with the updated vocabulary, right? You should still phrase it that way. So that,
I'm only now going to just move for the first.
Okay,
Oh,
I got
okay.
you. I'm sorry.
Number 2. How about we start there? Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we approve item 1A, the main building, paint the previously painted portions of the building, including the concrete and stucco areas and metal components, on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report.
Second?
That's a Kriegel-Bates motion. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
He's amended it, so, I mean, you can
Well, but
do a motion to deny the amended, as amended or whatever.
He's as presented, it paints all of the ground floor and painted brick. As he's described, it would just paint the south. So I personally think the motion still stands. I believe you guys are saying paint none of it.
Okay, so I move that we deny item 1B, the main building, paint the unpainted brick on the basis that the project does not comply with regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section D of the staff report.
Second?
That's a Kriegel-Bates motion. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, item D is DTCA 19-00054, Part 2, at 820 North Classen Boulevard.
I'm sorry, we'll rewind and go back to where I was a while ago. So this is for the Classen Inn Motel, and staff administratively approved all the work that's being done or soon will be done on the building. And so what's before you are the 2 items that are going to require variances. One of those items is for the work they propose to do on the sign, which is the historic sign, and they want to restore the features that used to be on the top of the sign. And the reason that it needs a variance is because it's located in the right-of-way. And the second thing that they're wanting to do is when you drive by and you see this little curb island, you look at it and say, oh, they have a parking lot in front of the motel. Well, the property line is actually about where I've got the red line. So even their only modification in the parking area is they're going to angled parking instead of the straight-in parking. They're adding a handicap parking spot. But the maneuvering that you have to do to get in and out of the parking spaces is in the right-of-way. And we referenced the section of the code that prohibits that. So they need a variance for that work, which is why you've got that before you. So let me flip to their drawing, sorry. Boom. That's the current conditions, and the proposed condition, as you can see, is for the angled parking. They're also doing some modifications, eliminating that current curb island they've got. They're doing some modifications in the pedestrian path, which staff is very supportive of. And clearly, you can see how they're doing a one-way maneuvering of it. And then the sign that's located, what they have provided to us, and I only provided this one to show you how we calculate area of a sign, because they need it for size, they need it for height, and they need it for it being located in the right-of-way. And when you have a sign of this unique shape, this shading area, we count all that towards signage. So it's not like they're going to have however many, over 100 square foot of actual words. They're not. But this is all part of the attention-getting aspect of it. It's not structural in nature. So this is what it looks like, and the pieces on the top is what they're wanting to restore. It's possible that part of those might be found. I don't know. They're hoping it's stashed somewhere, because apparently when the roof was added, it closed off access to the alley. Not alley, I'm sorry, the attic. Wrong A word. And so it could be in there when they pull the roof off, which would be kind of exciting. So staff was supportive of this. The Public Works Department has weighed in on it. There's some emails provided to you for that because of the whole maneuvering in the right-of-way aspect of that. So the architect is here, the owner is here. And if you have any questions for me.
I just have a detailed question on the new curb design between Classen and the drive aisle. Mm-hmm. Is it staff? I guess we went over this with the parking garage next to the convention center too. So it looks like what's being proposed is just the curb, and that the pedestrian path is at street level.
That's my understanding.
And is that the preference?
No, the drawing note says continuous sidewalk.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said.
But is that? Go ahead.
Hi.
So section BB, where the way I read it is the separation between Classen and the walking path for pedestrian is a single 6-inch curb, and that the pedestrian path is not elevated at that curb height. It is down at the drive surface. And the delineation between the pedestrian walking path and the on-site drive aisle is a 4-inch pavement marking.
But the pedestrian path is still continuous and doesn't change elevation, which is what we ask for.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Yes, sorry, Anna McBroom, Gardner Architects. That is, you are reading that correctly.
Yeah,
we worked with
Yeah,
staff
I'm sorry, I didn't-
to not have a change in that elevation. We're not pouring any new paving in that area. It's just done with striping, and then the new curb would be to delineate between street and site.
Okay.
And there have been other areas which we end up with the curb being high and the sidewalk being low. We're going to have that up at 6th and Walker. That was a little unusual to me, but now I'm seeing that we have that all over. But our primary was to keep that pedestrian path continuous through there.
Okay. That's. I think I need to get up to speed on that preference, because I had the same question on the parking garage next to the convention center. It seems counterintuitive to me, so I'll follow up to figure that out.
Okay.
Sorry. Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, I'll just comment to say we appreciate Laura working with us on the site. We chose to go to an angled parking because actually if we kept it 90 degree, you don't get the clearance that you need to back out. So changing it to 45, you get the correct clearance. Changing the curb cuts there actually makes that a safer and more clear path for both pedestrians and for vehicles coming into the site. When it comes to the sign, like she mentioned in your packet, you have an attached letter from the previous owner stating he's the one who removed the spikes and the globes. He decided he didn't like that aesthetic. He currently at this time cannot find them, so we'll be fabricating them unless we, like she said, we discover them, some hidden things when we take off that roof. But the sign has always been in the right-of-way historically, and we're not changing that. We're just bringing it up, and again, that's another part of town that's growing and changing, and the owner wants to be a part of that. So.
Hi, I'm Steve Mason. I'm the applicant, and Jason Whittle is also part of the project as we develop it. Thanks for looking at this. We're preservationists, and we're preserving a building with a sign that's in a unique place for today and a driveway that's kind of unique, and we aren't asking to remove the breeze blocks on the front of the building. We think those are appropriate. So, you know, the rest, the application for the building that was handled administratively is cleaning it up, restoring it. And we're here to answer any questions you have.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? I think you've done a great job. And I hope that you're able to find the remaining parts to the sign, because I think that's going to be a dramatic difference in its presence on the street. And especially, I don't, are there photographs that show that center spike? Because it's a little different. It's got the two orange, but then the center pole seems to be round in a different construction. I was just curious.
All we have are the spikes.
Right,
That
and
one.
there's, in a different picture, in a view, you can see, on that middle picture, you can kind of see there's the former mounting for it. You can see that that's
like
where it
right
used to be
here.
there, but we don't have any photographs of that center spike.
So my architects told me this is Googie architecture. That's a word I learned.
Is there a Plan B in place if those pieces are not found?
Fabrication.
Okay. So the end result would look like this, either if it's existing pieces or new?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report, with the conditions that the applicant obtains a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the prohibition of maneuvering in the public right-of-way, prohibition of signs in the right-of-way, maximum height for ground signs, and maximum size for, just maximum height for ground signs and maximum size for ground signs.
So Richard's Kriegel motion, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And I will also provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the prohibition of maneuvering in the public right-of-way, prohibition of signs in the right-of-way, maximum height for ground signs, and maximum size for ground signs.
So Richard's Kriegel motion, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item E is DTCA 19-00055 at 1000 North Lee Avenue. Is the applicant present?
This is an application for 1000 North Lee, better known as the St. Anthony Hospital, which is now known as SSM Healthcare St. Anthony. The catalyst for this request is the merger between SSM Health and St. Anthony's and the rebranding that's necessary and all the signage at this facility around the entire block, which is bounded on Northwest 10th on the north, North Lee on the west, Northwest 9th on the south, and North Dewey on the east. I believe there's a total of 10 freestanding signs involved in this request, and something on the order of 13 or 14, I think, attached accessory signs. I've made reference in the staff report that some of these attached signs, particularly on the east and west facades of the building, had to be broken into smaller pieces that had to be counted as separate individual signs in order to, I guess, maintain legibility, but at the same time use only the space that's available to them between floors and so on and so forth. So essentially, I think there's 8 replacement signs for the attached accessory signs, and I think 3 new signs involving the crosses that are being added to the building on Northwest 10th and Northwest 9th. Bottom line is, this is a comprehensive rebranding program that we've already seen take place with a different approval on the block to the north. And then we've already done 2 administrative approvals that affect the same rebranding project to the property on the south side of Northwest 9th and on the west side of North Lee Avenue. Those projects were, the signage was so limited in few numbers that there was no variances entailed, and therefore they were done administratively. These, unfortunately, as you can see how much space this takes up on your agenda, I don't think it might set a record for the page, but we had to list each one individually so that the committee would know which variances apply to which signs that are being proposed for you. So we had to break it down into multiple individual pieces. In essence, the bottom line is, because of the significance of this facility to the community and its importance as an emergency facility with an emergency room, and the size of the campus for the health center there, and the need to orient motorists as they're arriving at the site as to which way to go to get to the part of the facility they're trying to get to, we feel it's important to make sure that these signs are available to the community and to residents and visitors that are coming to the site seeking emergency services or other medical services. Again, all the freestanding signs are existing. They're just essentially being changed in their face and the rebranding to the SSM Healthcare brand. And as a result of those reasons, we are, as staff, recommending to the committee that you approve all the signs included in this application, and then subsequently provide a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment approving the variance request. And that concludes our presentation. I'm prepared to respond to any questions the committee may have.
Do we have any questions for staff? Would the applicant like to say anything?
Jim Gleason, I'm with GNS Sign Services, 1019 East Grand Boulevard. I just briefly wanted to give you a little bit of history on the design process for this building and the new name change. Originally St. Anthony Hospital, the word St. Anthony Hospital incorporating the cross logo. Over the last over a year, the design, it's just been a progressive, how do we do this type process. The hospital wanted to maintain a cross presence on every elevation. Well, before being the cross was a logo and incorporated into the logo, it was on every elevation. With the new SSM Health logo being an infinity logo, it took the cross out of the word SSM Health and lengthened the name to SSM Health St. Anthony Hospital. So with that huge length in the name of the hospital, plus the infinity logo taking the place of the cross logo, it increased our number of signs just because of readability. So we did readability studies on letter heights, and we knew that we couldn't go on the tower where the cross is located in this elevation, so that St. Anthony Hospital used to be located in that area. With the new name length, infinity logo, SSM Health, St. Anthony Hospital, it was so small it couldn't be read from 50 feet, let alone, several hundred feet from the new expanded campus. The reading distance increased also. So this was where we finally settled at, was to separate everything, put the cross on the tower on this elevation, SSM Health with the new Infinity logo, and then separate St. Anthony Hospital. And what that did was it did slightly increase our overall square footage and increased, of course, our number of signs because of the way they're defined and the way the square footage is calculated.
Do you have any questions or comments for the applicant? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that A, the applicant shall obtain variances from the Board of Adjustment for the prohibition against signs in the street right-of-way from the maximum number of attached accessory wall signs, from the maximum area displaced surface area for attached accessory wall signs, from the maximum height for freestanding signs, from the maximum number of freestanding signs, from the maximum displaced surface area of freestanding signs, and from the landscaping requirements of freestanding signs.
It's a Bates-Kriegel motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'd also like to move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for variances from the prohibition against signs in the street of right-of-way, from the maximum number of attached accessory wall signs, from the maximum displaced surface area for attached accessory wall signs, from the maximum height of freestanding signs, from the maximum number of freestanding signs, from the maximum displaced surface area for freestanding signs, and from the landscaping requirements for freestanding signs.
It's a Bates-Kriegel motion. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
I gave her the right one.
Next is item F, Fdtca 19-00060 at 525 Northwest 11th Street.
I'll introduce this one. This is a new building on the former Boulevard Cafeteria site. It's on the north side of Northwest 11th. It's north of the Plaza Court building. 2 stories, a mix of retail and office, a couple of signs, some new streetscape work. The only issue that staff is pointing out in the staff report is the arrangement of the entire pedestrian zone is a little atypical in regard to the guidelines and the downtown development framework. I believe the applicant will explain that has a lot to do with the significant grade change on the site. So with that, I'll let the...
Do you have any questions for staff?
For me.
Go ahead.
Kristen Jennings with Fitzsimmons Architects, 2721 North Walker. And Lisa's correct. The site at the Boulevard is fairly severe in grading from one corner to the other. And in order to maintain a consistent level across the sidewalk, parking lot, and arcade, that we're all gentle to pedestrians and easy to navigate, as well as providing ADA access to all parts of the project, we opted for a few steps from the sidewalk into the arcade in various locations, which provides a little landscaping where is atypical toward the north side of the sidewalk instead of on the south. The barrier provided by the street parking is 8.5 feet in depth, and where there is no street parking, there is the landscape zone, as you would typically see. Yeah. So we didn't exactly swap them so much as provide an extra landscape zone and then street parking in place of.
Do we have any comments or questions for the applicant? I like the way that you've addressed the site. I mean, I realize the complexity of the grade and the way that you've navigated between your landscaping beds, and you've used landscaping as a method to achieve that. I think that was well done. So that works really well, and I think that being able to get in and out of the buildings now is much easier than if maybe solved a different way. So
I'll move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report.
I'll second.
the Bates-Richard motion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 7 is other business, and we have a recommendation for an ordinance relating to zoning and planning code.
Lisa Cronister, Planning Department. If you were at the commissioner training in January, I presented some preliminary information about how we were going to update the ordinances in all of the design districts to accommodate the review of small wireless facilities. So a lot of the information I'm going to present is the same as what you saw in January, and I'll point out how the ordinance has developed since then. And downtown is the first design review committee we're going to get the recommendation to Planning Commission, and throughout for the next 4 or 5 weeks we'll be going to all the rest. So what are small cells? They are a single pole tower that provides additional capacity in the system, specifically doing this at a closer to the ground, closer to where the signals are used. Their height is usually between 31 and 35 feet, although they could be up to 50 feet. They are a single pole, roughly 10 inches in diameter. They do have some components attached to them at various places, but for the most part, the components don't stick out. We have already administratively approved several of these throughout downtown. I don't think we've seen one installed yet. I haven't been able to get a picture of one actually installed. Oh, yeah, but in downtown, downtown, midtown, we've probably approved at least a dozen. So one day they'll all appear. So we have been approving them, and that has actually given us a great opportunity to work with the cell tower companies and to troubleshoot what does and does not work in the process. Yeah, yeah. Right, this is Hudson and Maine, and this was a proposal for one, but it won't be there. And this is an example from another city showing similar installation. So the whole reason we're talking about this is last year some state legislation was passed that allowed them in the right-of-way. You remember a couple years ago, this body heard several applications regarding that. They are allowed in the right-of-way, end of story. They are permitted use. So it also, the legislation also established the timeline and some of the process that municipalities could use to review the cell towers. So fortunately, municipalities are not left out in terms of their review, but there are certain rules to follow as we do. So that's why we started this ordinance in the first place. So our approach was, as per the legislation, said that our criteria had to be, quote, reasonable and objective, and that it couldn't apply only to cell towers. It had to apply to everything in the streetscape: benches, trash cans, light poles. Then as staff, we wanted, so we can't limit the number of pole locations per block, but staff wanted to encourage co-location in an effort to minimize that, and I'll show how we attempted to do that. And we've had several outreach meetings and conversations with the cell tower providers, specifically as we work through some of the previous applications, we reveal things that need to be considered, and they really have worked with us on that. So, an overview for the code revisions. Again, this is for every design district. We wanted first to establish that the wireless facilities were an item that needed to be reviewed, and how we made some of the streetscape guidelines a little more consistent so that we could use them to review against the wireless facilities. And we tried to make all the design districts more consistent toward that. So design districts you're very familiar with. Obviously you guys review downtown, but the same ordinance will apply to everything, including historic preservation, which I'll come back to toward the end of the presentation. So I detail in the staff report everything that we work to make common to all districts. So the ordinances for all the districts, none of them completely included all of these things. Some included one part, some included the other part. But in the ordinance that's presented, we've inserted to fill in the gaps, and we've changed language to make them all consistent. So we're saying, yes, they require a CA because all streetscape amenities require a CA. It authorizes administrative approval. One reason we arrived at that is because of the specified timeline for review in the Senate bill. If it goes to committee, there's a possibility that we would miss the timeline. And we believed if we tightened up on the guidelines, then it should be approvable by staff because it's met all the criteria. We include a provision that replacement of public and private improvements needs a CA. That hasn't always been the case. That we've in terms of our workflow, I've treated that kind of on a case-by-case basis, but we've tightened that up a little bit because if a light pole or cell tower or something, if it's installed in the wrong location right now, we wanted an opportunity to correct it in the future by requiring a new CA. We've tried to encourage co-location by exempting the installation of additional equipment on existing poles. So if you're putting new stuff on something that's existing, we want you to do that all day long. And then, like I was saying, so this wireless facilities will be considered a, quote, amenity, and amenities have to follow the circulation guidelines, specifically regarding clear pedestrian path. So some more provisions that are common to all the districts. Like I said, we can't limit the number of pole locations. We can specify that no amenities can impede parking spaces, like where the car door opens, where people enter and exit cars, whether that's parallel parking or angled parking, because we have both of those conditions throughout all the design districts. So that the material and finish, specifically the color, needs to match everything else on the street. Like in downtown, the Project 180 standard is a silver anodized, but in Bricktown, it's black. In Automobile Alley, it's black. Around the ballpark, it's dark green. And there are some places where the predominant style is a wood pole, and there are places where that is appropriate. Should follow the color. So we tied that down even more at the request of the cell tower providers to say that poles need to specifically need to match the color and finish. And there was a guideline in some of the districts that you couldn't have any suspended component lower than 8 feet. We've made sure that that is consistent across all the districts. So again, you can walk without impediment and without fear you're going to bump your head. Then, so 3 of the districts had very weak pedestrian zone guidelines, so we couldn't really fully address the small wireless facilities until we beefed up some of the sidewalk guidelines in terms of pedestrian clear path. So we've done that in Scenic River, Stockyards, and Urban Design. Then historic preservation, in addition to their ordinance text, they have a freestanding standards and guidelines book. And it's in that book where streetscape elements are, where the criteria for streetscape elements are defined. So we don't have to update the HP ordinance, but we do need to update their supplemental guideline. It was pretty simple. Again, we added small wireless facilities as something that needed to be reviewed. And then we said, regardless of what, there was already a section for utility components, but we've expanded that to get the information about not impeding traffic in and out of cars and to match the material, finish, and color of other things within the block. So our schedule, May and June, this will be presented to all the design review districts. Hopefully we'll be presenting to Planning Commission in July and August, and then on to City Council. So questions? So the requested action is that the committee provide a recommendation of approval to Planning Commission.
Lisa, on the clause where a CA is not required if you're adding additional equipment to an existing pole, if an entity were to do that, whatever they do still needs to meet the guidelines, correct?
Yeah, the actual ordinance text says as long as it's at least 8 feet above the ground.
Okay.
But if it's an existing pole that they're not replacing, we're not requiring that you would ever have to replace the existing pole. And that's pretty consistent for just about any design element.
And is there ever a limit to how much of the pole could be covered in equipment?
There's probably a technical limit. It's also, the competing companies are not prone to co-locating. So it's unlikely that they would actually try to co-locate. And yes, there's probably a technical limit.
I'm wondering if, I was looking at well, should we finish up that discussion? Sorry. I was going to move on to another point.
I'm done.
Okay. So you said that you were trying to incentivize people to co-locate, but you also just said that it's unlikely it's ever going to happen, basically. I mean, I wonder if we need to say that they have to co-locate unless
we can't require them to co-locate.
Okay.
As far as co-locating, we currently have that going on with power poles. So the co-location isn't just with cell providers, but it's also with other utilities. And it's actually a lot easier. I think they're working with OG&E. Some of the cell tower companies are having a good relationship with OG&E. And so that is going on right now. So this covers that action and they don't need a CA when they co-locate on an existing power pole. So that is something that's happening, that's not, cell towers companies don't have to agree to, because that's difficult.
Well, and I could understand why we couldn't, force them necessarily to make that agreement, but at least maybe they could prove that, or show that they did reach out to another company that's on the street and ask if they could co-locate, like some attempt to do that. I don't know if that's possible.
Susan, do you want to speak
Well,
to that?
I don't think we could put that in the ordinance as a requirement.
I want to follow up with Corey's concern, because I had the same thing when you were presenting that about the waiving the CA for an existing pole. They're really limited to just putting equipment on the top of the pole, right? There's no other reason or anything else they would actually do to a pole, correct?
Correct.
Are there limitations on the equipment itself?
Yeah, just from conversations with the cell tower people, they would, in all likelihood, replace the existing pole. If there's an existing wood pole, because this has happened, I'm thinking of near Cottage District, where their definition of replacing was to install a whole new pole right next to it. And that would need a CA. But if you're just applying equipment to an existing pole, but as technology advances, that might not even be possible. But we were trying to capture Delara's point about if they want to go on light poles, traffic poles, because that is done in other cities.
So if their existing equipment becomes obsolete and they're not utilizing that pole, is there any requirement for them to pull it or do anything with it?
No.
I'll look at that for you, because I think there is something if you abandon it, maybe, but I can't remember. I can't recall. They may have to be required to remove it at some point.
So I just wanted to point out at 6th and Walker, where the Crittenbrink is building that new office building, in the alley. So that's kind of hard to get in the alley now, but there is a wooden pole about halfway in the alley, and if you look at that, you can see the top of it, to me, it kind of looks like a thimble now, and then there's some other equipment. So the wood pole was already there, and that's AT&T that came in, and they put their equipment on that existing pole, and they didn't need it to get a CA, because initially we thought they had to, and they gave me the paperwork, and we confirmed, no, they don't need a CA for that, because it's an existing pole. But if you wanted to look and see what one looked like.
And it's essentially kind of this top piece?
Yeah. And then there's a box that's a little further down, but it's still much higher than 8 feet.
I think the concern is if they're not required to get a CA, then we lose the oversight of what is done to an existing pole. And my imagination will just take it to where you have an existing pole that has 50 things on it.
Or it comes back down and touches the ground again off of the existing pole.
Comes below, well, I think the 8 feet rule is still in play. So I guess is there a tipping point at some point where, I don't know. Yeah.
Does it at least come to you?
Conceptually, and we can, we thought exempting the installation of additional equipment would be an easy way to offer something in terms of co-location. I personally thought that overweighed the danger of what might actually go on. But if the committee believes it's that it is more important that we look at it, we can strike this or otherwise modify it.
I think the way it's being approached is the right way, the way you guys have it. I'm just sort of speculating at this point. I do think the incentive to co-locate is a priority.
Because I think there's only going to be so much co-location because you still need power and telecom to it. I'm assuming there's some radio interference at some certain mass, plus the structural capacity of the pole. That's just what I've been able to piece together.
I think the only reason that I agree with you. It's the priority. I guess the reason I like the idea of them having to get a CA is because I want somebody to be on notice that they're playing with the pole and putting more equipment on there, and so there's a check, But you'll really not have any notice of equipment going up.
Because the other thing is they don't have to get a revocable if they're going on an existing pole. And so this is kind of bringing us in line with the whole revocable permit process. Because initially when I told AT&T, no, you need to get a CA for that, but I don't need to get a revocable. And so there was this kind of tugging going on, and then we had a discussion with legal, and it's like, okay, you don't have to get one, and that's probably something, since you don't have to get a revocable, that's something that we could willingly offer them to say, we really want you to go on existing poles, and if you do that, you don't have to go through our process. So.
I'm curious about the discussions about the worst-case scenario. So multiple providers, none of them want to be co-locating, but they all want to be in the same place. Is it correct that as long as they have clearances required for ADA, as long as they meet the ordinance for other elements within the right-of-way, that there could be this sea of half a dozen poles, all of a similar type and magnitude, all within a very, is that a potential, and is that a problem?
It is, I think it's conceptually possible. The thing I think is limiting it is, and I'm thinking, I always think of the block of Main Street between Walker and Hudson. You have existing street trees, you have existing light poles, you have existing benches, you have parking spaces. I mean, it's already full. The amenity zone is already full. So I can think of maybe one place where there's even, by the time you've spliced together all the criteria, I can only think of like one place where you could put a cell tower. And that's the same why I believe we meet the intention of the Senate bill is I don't think there's room for another bench. I don't think there's room for another mailbox, trash can. So it's self-regulating. Now, are there blocks outside of the Project 180 streetscape that might have more room? Yes, there are. And I would think that those might get filled up as soon as they can. So far, so we've worked a lot with Verizon and AT&T, and they have not proposed any even on the same block. And I can't speak to what their coverage strategy is on that.
We went back to them when they submitted this and said, no, we can't agree to this location because it is in the path of people coming across the sidewalk if they're walking south, and it's right in the accessible route. And so I came back at them and said, we need to move it to the west. We have a place down here by a tree bed in an area that already has pavers, and nobody's walking there, and there's no parking. And we thought, great location. Well, AT&T said no. So I know now they're looking on the other side of Hudson. I don't really know where it can go on the other side because of all the landscaping there is.
But another reason this is not moving forward is traffic's not approving it because it's in the site triangle.
And we had another one, yes, we had another one down by the post office that I came up with a location if they could move it, but it was in the site triangle, and Public Works said no.
Yeah, so you have our requirements plus utilities plus traffic, and like I said, obviously there are some blocks that might be more available, but in downtown, midtown, Automobile Alley, Bricktown, it's pretty full. Streetcar stops now, I mean, there's a lot.
So really, it seems like the best locations is where there's already existing poles that they can just come in and replace anything and just get it going, right?
Right. I mean, it would be just fantastic if they were able to strike a deal with OG&E to put them on light poles, for example, because we know the light poles don't impede any of this stuff, and we know they match. It would be the most unobtrusive thing they could do, but...
Well, in this picture, there's a bunch of light poles, and they obviously don't want to do that, I guess.
Well, well...
That's not a light pole, I know it's
yeah,
a traffic pole, whatever it is.
So traffic management's in charge of the signal lights, and they are reluctant, it's my understanding, they're reluctant to have other vendors working on their equipment. So they're currently not in favor of co-location. I think OG&E had similar but different concerns, but that conversation is ongoing.
I've actually seen the one by Quail Springs Mall, I believe, and it looks just like on the side. But I think their main reason for these towers is people walking around them. And that's, I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. But in this location like that, I'm like, unless if they get it going on one of those poles, I don't see them.
Yeah, I also want to clarify in the ordinance text, it says that all of these things need to be located in the amenity zone, which is the first 3 to 5 feet off the curb, again, to really protect this clear path. And our feeling was if we can get the color of the pole to match, we're halfway there, because that's what sticks out the most. And they've been extremely accommodating when we've suggested silver, black, or wood. But yes, we can't, they're allowed, and they're allowed in the right-of-way, and we can't limit the number of them.
So we need to provide a recommendation.
Yes, and I'm happy to bring back more information or, to improve it if that's what the committee is thinking.
I like the idea of just confirming what the guideline is with respect to abandoned equipment. I think that is important so that we don't have this case of sprawl where equipment just gets outdated and left behind and it remains.
Yeah, that, we can confirm if they're required. From talking to the companies, that's unlikely. Yeah, and
I guess you're suggesting it couldn't be added. Like, is that something that we could add if it is unlikely because they put it there? And
I think our authority goes to, we can do like guidelines for reasonable and objective guidelines is what our authority is as far as this body.
Sure, and we would, it would be the same for waste receptacles and benches too. We wouldn't want the old ones to remain there, and usually that's not an issue, but we'll confirm, we'll see what we can do. It seems like they would be self-motivated to remove it, otherwise they won't have room, because that, after a while, that's going to be the only place it can go, so you'd have to remove it in order to get that spot back.
Okay, so Susan, we don't have any authority for anything regarding cleaning up when they're done with equipment.
No, I don't think so. I think that it actually is in the statute, but I'll have to look at it. And like I say, it may be something that the city purchases, or I can't remember. It was something what the language was, but I'll double check.
Well, look.
I mean, typically in the old cell towers, they're on top of a building, and the landlord could require that equipment to be moved when it became obsolete. But now with this, there won't be. But that's again we're a design review committee, so.
Well, and I would think it would be more of a general clause with all utilities. like if a light pole is no longer functional, is there something in the city ordinance or somewhere that deals with abandoned utilities as a general?
I know, we'll look.
Yeah.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of this ordinance amendment to the Planning Commission.
Second.
It's a Kriegel-Bates motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, item B. We need to fire the current chair. That's what the next item on the agenda says. I paraphrased it. We need to elect a chair. We need to decide if we want to, somebody wants to make a motion on who will be the chair moving forward.
I would.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. It's just, I think that if you want to make that the motion, then
Does anybody else want to start?
no. Just,
So we're doing one at a time here, right? How long have you been doing this, Anthony? Tony?
this one very short.
I think it was just February, because Nathaniel had to resign.
So I'm going to, I move that we elect Tony as the chair of the committee.
I will second that.
A Kriegel-Richards motion. All in favor? Aye. I'm going to abstain.
Okay, and then I'll make a motion that we elect Corey Bates as the vice chair.
I will second that.
Okay, it's a Kriegel-Richards motion. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8 is communications. We have several items under administrative approval report. Are there any of them that we need to speak to? It's been a full month.
And we'll be extremely busy for June 20th also.
We have a meeting, we have items on the agenda.
Nice. Okay. What day?
I was going to say, it's June 20th. Could everybody confirm really quickly if you're able to confirm?
It's the third Thursday.
I will be in Colorado.
Sorry, you can't go.
I'll be in Boy Scout camp. Anybody who wants to trade and
Just fire that chair. I re-elect you. That's all right, Corey.
I'll trade my boots.
Thank you.
I will.
Great. As far as staff goes, the earlier we know we're not going to have a quorum, the better it is, because it's a long process to actually schedule a special meeting. So that's why we always ask you way far in advance.
Yeah, because we have 7 or 8 cases.
Yeah.
Do we have any comments from committee members?
None of them are going to be controversial, are they?
No comment.
Define controversial.
I might have to be gone.
Okay. Our next meeting date's the 20th. We have an agenda, and we are adjourned.